I'm putting a little paper sleeve around this canal because it's very small. I want to make sure the burst charge stays in the centre of the shell. Just peel the ends back so that when we sit this down inside the casing, the stars will sit on top of it and hold it in place. These are little, just under 1/4 inch Charlie Wilson silver chrysanthemum. And these are the green. Fill it about halfway full on the first filling and give it a good tamp down. A little bit of pulverone. Nice and tight. There's no liner in this casing. I've got a little pencil mark at 5.5 centimetres up the inside of the case, so I can fill them all to the same level. Burst charge in there. The burst I'm using for this is about 3FA, 4FA. It's quite fine. You don't want to be using very coarse powder on little tiny insert shell. It doesn't burn fast enough. This gives a better burst. This fine powder burns much quicker. About a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half, teaspoon and 3/4. Nail a twist and pull, wriggle it about. Just overfilled a little bit. And then just fold the tissue over the burst charge like that to keep it into place. And just a touch below my fill level, so I've got a few more grains of 2FA in there just to pulverone, just to fill it up. Pop the end disc in. As I've only got 3 turns of £30 paper here, I don't pleat the layers down individually. I just put the whole lot over in one go. It's very thin. And then disc on the top. Although I don't have all my shell cases filled yet, I do need to get these little insert shells, which are going to be turned into shell of shells. I've got 1.5 and 2 inch inserts. I need to get these spiked and pasted before I can put them into a shell. So I'll just go through a little bit of the basics of spiking while I'm doing these 2 small ones here. I've got a couple of methods I use to spike. I use this spiking cam, which I got from Walter Pyro Tools. It's a very simple tool. The twine, in this case, I've got 2 strands going through the back of here. They're on spools here. They run through the back of this bar and then out the front. And then you take a loop of the twine, twist it, drop it over this peg here, and if you pull now in this direction it runs through freely. If you swing the bar around up against the peg, it's absolutely locked tight. Now on these little shells, on the 1 inch, I just put one single strand of 1mm. It's that small. It doesn't really need two. But on the 2 inch, I do use 2 strands, and I use 2 strands on virtually all the shells that I build. Sometimes I use 3 on a very big shell. Now on this little insert shell, I like the off-center pattern of spiking. As you can see on here, it forms like a star on the bottom, and it's nice and flat on the bottom and it's flat on the top. There is another way of spiking where each time you come up to the top, you give it 90-degree turn around the fuse or the spolet and then bring it back down again. That method's okay for some single break shells. It's not a bad way of spiking by any means, but most of the time, if you're making a multi-break or you want to keep your spiking nice and flat and you don't want to build up, and particularly where you've got a time fuse, there's not a lot poking out, you don't want to be going a 1/4 inch up the side of the fuse there with windings around it of twine. So I'm using the off-center pattern here, and on both of these shells I'm using 12 vertical passes along the shell there. Okay, what I do is I pull a little bit of the twine out, and then I like to just wet this hemp twine just along a 4-inch section where I'm going to make a couple of loops. To drop over the spolet or the time fuse. If it's wet, it's nice and soft. It softens the twine up and it hugs the time fuse a lot better, and you can also push it down a bit better. So I'll just pull it nice and tight around the spolet there and just cut the excess off. Okay, I'm going to spike these shells, the 2-inch inserts and the 1.5-inch inserts. I'm going to use £30 virgin craft paper on both of them. The 2-inch I'm going to put 3 turns of it on, and the 1.5-inch just 2 turns. You'll see when it comes to pasting your paper why you need virgin craft paper. If If you try this with any kind of recycled paper, it's likely to just fall apart. Now, I cut this paper grain short, the grain's running in this direction on the paper. To be honest, I don't think it makes a great deal of difference cutting the paper grain short when you're pasting, because in a moment I'm going to scrumple all this paper up and break the grain, as they say, and that's exactly what I'm doing, is breaking the grain. So I don't really see any advantage in having the grain running one way or the other when you come to pasting, but that's the way it's specified in the traditional cylinder shell building by A. Fulcanelli, and who am I to argue with that? So I just put a good coat of paste on both sides of the paper here. Just rub it on all the way over, make sure you cover all of it. I'm using rice flour for my paste. This is just normal rice flour you buy in the supermarket. I put 2 cupfuls with 5 cupfuls of water. Mix the 2 cupfuls of flour first with some cold water till you get a kind of soupy consistency. Pour boiling water onto it, stirring it, and then boil it for about 10 minutes. It makes very good paste. I can't get wheat paste here, and I've tried wheat flour, and I'm not particularly impressed with it. I find this rice flour works very well. I used to use sticky rice flour. Now that really does work well. It makes excellent paste, absolutely excellent. Dries rock hard, really smooth. The only problem is it's really slimy and horrible to work with, so I gave up using it for that reason. Now I've feathered all these strips out. I've got, I think it's 6 or 7 strips for the 2-inch. I feathered them out 1/2 inch apart, and then I just fold up a little bit, and now I squeeze it really hard. Oh, I should add, I've put a little bit of surfactant. I've got a cleaning company and I use surfactant for cleaning products that I manufacture. It's nonyl phenyl ethoxylate, which is actually the main ingredient in virtually every cleaning compound you ever get your hands on. Is about 20% of it normally in washing up liquid, and this just wets the paper a lot quicker. The paste soaks into the paper faster. You can put 2 or 3 drops of dishwashing liquid in, it'll do just the same thing. So give it a good squeeze and then just turn it around like this, wriggle it. What you're trying to do is break the fibres of the paper, allow the glue to soak into all the fibres so the paper's really well saturated. When it's done properly, you'll see the paper turn to a dark brown, or a darker brown than originally was. I can now just see how much you need to bring the paper up against the base of your time fuse, and I put a cap plug on these small shells. It protects the fuse against being dropped on the floor, protects against accidental ignition, but most importantly it keeps the fuse dry. You don't get paste all over it by mistake. So all you do is just roll it up, and as you roll it, the 2 turns, just work the air bubbles out of the paper between the casing. You should be able to see the spiking through it. I don't want too much paste on my hands, so just get rid of the paste a bit. Now some people just fold all this over like this, some people twist it around the top. You can do any way you like, but I find that the best way is to spend a little bit of time and just tear tabs back along the top here. Just tear it down to the shoulder where the end disc is, and I find it seals the shell better if you do it like this. Don't be tempted to use scissors doing this. Straight scissor cut edges don't lie down as flat and as neatly as rough edges that you've torn by hand. And just smooth each piece down, making sure it's nice and close up against the base of the time fuse or spillet. You don't want too much paste around the fuse area itself. Don't need to overdo the same thing on the bottom. And it looks like I cut this just a little bit too short. So you can just take another piece of pasted paper and just put it down in the inside there just to cover that centre section. Tear them back. And smooth them over. Which is done.